This is part 16 of our Revelation study. We're going to be in chapter 6, verses 1 through 8 tonight. This is the four horsemen. They are making their entrance tonight. We're going to read, as we normally do, read it, and then we'll go through verse by verse. So starting in verse 1, Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a voice like thunder, Come! And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, Come! And out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth, so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. When he opened the third seal, I heard the third living creature say, Come, and I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures, saying, A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, Come, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence and by wild beasts of the earth. All right, so last time we ended our study by looking at the worship in heaven that was found in Revelation 5, 8 through 14. And we saw worship begin at the center with the living creatures and elders, then it spread to the angels, and finally it spread out to all creation like a wave, as we talked about. And this worship focused on Jesus, the Lamb who was slain. Every group in heaven declared that only Jesus is truly worthy of praise and worship. Worship in heaven is real, deep, and focused on who Jesus is and what He has done for us. We also learned that believers have a new identity. We are both a kingdom and priests because Jesus died for us. And this shapes how we worship and how we live. Our worship flows from gratitude, not from duty. It is full of both truth and emotion, and it joins us to the worship that is already going on in heaven. Knowing that, we can approach God with confidence and hope for the future. Now, at the end of chapter 5, we saw the Lamb took the scroll. And chapter 6 shows why this is so important. Jesus, the Lamb, is not only the Redeemer we worship, He is the only one who is able and worthy to open the seals of God's plan for history. And there's a sharp contrast as we move from chapter 5 to chapter 6. We move from the peace and beauty of heavenly worship to scenes of shaking and judgment on the earth. Now, what we see in chapter 6 may seem troubling, but we need to remember that the Lamb who opens the seals is the same Lamb worshipped by all of heaven. He is gentle and sacrificed for us, but He is also strong and has authority to act in justice. As we follow the opening of the seals, we will see how God's plan unfolds for a world that has turned away from Him. We will also find many connections with Old Testament prophecy and with Jesus' own teaching about the end times in Matthew 24 and 25. So, we'll begin with the first section, the opening of the first seal and the coming of the white horse and its rider. We're going to be tying all of this back to Jesus' Mount Olivet discourse. I have never been taught this. Or if I have, I just completely blanked out or something. But what we see in Revelation 6 perfectly follows what Jesus said would happen on the Mount Olivet. So we're going to let Jesus interpret how we see Revelation chapter 6. He told us what was going to happen, so we're going to let Him be the one that interprets this for us. I don't know how I've been alive for 39 years and never heard it taught this way, but maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it's bad teaching and that's what you're going to get tonight. Hopefully not, but All right, so Revelation 6, verses 1 and 2. Now I watched when the Lamb opened one of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures say with a loud voice like thunder, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. So when we look at the first seal, and as we go on, I think it's going to help us to let Jesus' teaching lead us in this. In Matthew 24, Jesus describes the signs of the end. He says the first thing his followers should watch for is deception. Okay, Matthew 24, verses 4 and 5. Jesus answered them, "See that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Christ,' and they will lead many astray." So Jesus says that at the beginning of the end, people will come claiming authority. They will offer hope and control. They will look trustworthy and even present themselves as saviors, and many people will believe them. This matches the vision that John receives. The Lamb opens the first seal, and a rider on a white horse appears. In biblical times, white could mean victory or purity, but not every white horse means a true Savior. The rider has a bow, a crown, and he rides out conquering. He looks like a leader who brings victory, but that does not make him right or good. Okay? So let's make the link clear. Matthew 24, 4 and 5, Jesus warns of false messiahs and spiritual deception. Revelation 6, 1 and 2, the first horseman rides out in the appearance of victory. And the rider on the white horse likely stands for that spirit of false hope, the rise of deceivers and leaders who promise peace and safety apart from Christ. This could be religious deception or political leaders who claim to offer what only Jesus truly gives. Most people think it's the Antichrist. I tend to believe that this is the Antichrist. Some people try to argue that this is Jesus. I do not think this is Jesus, because later in Revelation, Jesus does come out on a white horse, but he is not with a bow, right? He has a sword that he comes out with. And I think that this perfectly goes along with what Jesus said. There would be many that come in my name that look like me and are going to pretend to be me. I think this white horse rider is pretending to be like Jesus.
And you know, the Muslims they actually believe that verse.
Mm-hmm.
They believe that. They say the rest of it's false, but they believe this verse, this seal, is their Messiah. Mm-hmm. And which would make it our Antichrist, because when you read their beliefs, they parallel a lot in end time. But our Antichrist looks like their Messiah.
Yeah.
And that's what they even say here. This is their Messiah.
Yeah. Yeah. The Mahdi.
Mahdi, yeah.
Yeah. So that's interesting. We see this in the Old Testament. In Zechariah 6, 1 through 8, horses and riders are sent out to patrol, and they announce God's judgment. So let's just read this. Verse 1, "Again I lifted my eyes and saw, and behold, 4 chariots came out from between 2 mountains, and the mountains were mountains of bronze. And the first chariot had red horses, the second black horses, the third white horses, and the fourth chariot dappled horses," or spotted horses. "And all of them were strong. Then I answered and said to the angel who talked with me, 'What are these, my Lord?' And the angel answered and said to me, 'These are going out to the 4 winds of heaven after presenting themselves before Yahweh of all the earth. And the chariot with the black horses goes toward the north country, the white ones go after them, and the dappled ones go toward the south country.' When the strong horses came out, they were impatient to go and patrol the earth. And he said, 'Go, patrol the earth.' And so they patrolled the earth. Then he cried to me, 'Behold, those who go toward the north country have set my spirit at rest in the north country.'" This is part of a large vision that we're not going to get into tonight. But my point in bringing that out is these horses and riders are not brand new to John. It's not something brand new that John has seen. This is something that the Lord has used even in the Old Testament as well. In Psalm 45, there's a victorious king that does ride with a bow. In your majesty ride out victoriously for the cause of truth and meekness and righteousness. Let your right hand teach you awesome deeds. Your arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemies. The peoples will fall under you. Both of these Old Testament passages point to God acting in history through powerful figures, but those figures do not always bring blessing. Sometimes they bring judgment and are part of God's larger plan. I know that's not popular to teach and preach on nowadays, but sometimes judgment is a part of God's plan. So in John's day, the Romans and even rival powers like the Parthians used the image of the white horse to signal conquest and victories. Rulers would parade this way after winning battles, and the early church knew that not every earthly victory was a sign of God's blessing. And today the temptation is the same. People still look for new leaders, movements, or teachings to give them security and victory. But Jesus already warned us, the world will offer false saviors. So letting Jesus' words shape our reading keeps us safe. The first seal tells us that the troubles at the end begin not with war or disaster, but with a spirit of deception that looks appealing. We have to test every offer of hope and every human leader by the words of Jesus. The first horseman is a warning. Don't be fooled by appearances. Only the Lamb, Jesus, is worthy of our trust and worship. So that brings us to the second seal, verse 3 and 4. When he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature say, "Come," and out came another horse, bright red. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So how does this relate to Jesus and what he said? Well, after warning his disciples about the rise of false messiahs and religious deception, he immediately speaks about violent conflict. This is verses 6 and 7 of Matthew 24. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. Jesus does not hide the truth. He says that conflict and war will be a normal part of the world's story before his return. He talks about actual wars, those rumors that worry people, and those conflicts that truly break out. He also points to the deep-rooted hostility between nations and kingdoms, showing that violence won't just happen in one place, but everywhere. When the second seal is opened in Revelation 6, the red horse comes onto the scene. His mission matches the next stage of trouble that Jesus told his disciples to expect. The rider on the red horse is permitted to take peace from the earth so that people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. The sequence follows Jesus' words closely. After the deceivers, violence erupts across the world. It is not just one battle or even a series of wars. John describes a loss of peace. A loss of peace. Peace will be taken from the world. This is not just a war that has happened. There is a loss of peace in the whole world. It's an unraveling of the order that holds society together. The language, people should slay one another, points to widespread conflict. Violence that could be international, local, or even personal. Jesus' warning is not only about armies on battlefields, but about the breaking down of peace wherever people turn from him and from the truth. As Jesus said, see that you are not alarmed. He does not want his followers to panic because these things must take place. They are part of the world as it pushes God away. But they are not the final word. They show us our deep need for the true peace that only Christ can bring. The vision of colored horses in Revelation 6 lines up with the visions God gave to Zechariah, which were given to encourage and warn his people after the exile. In Zechariah chapter 1, verses 8 through 11, Zechariah sees a man riding a red horse standing among myrtle trees with other horses behind him, red, sorrel, and white. These horsemen are described as sent by God to patrol the earth. Verse 10 and 11 says, "These are they whom the Lord has sent to patrol the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord who is standing among the myrtle trees, We have patrolled the earth, and behold, all the earth remains at rest." Here, the red horse is part of a group that brings back a report of peace and rest. But rest is not a lasting condition. It is subject to change depending on God's plan for justice and judgment. In Zechariah 6, Zechariah sees another vision. We just talked about that. 4 chariots coming out from between 2 mountains. Each chariot is pulled by strong horses of different colors, red, black, white, and dappled. I'm not going to read that again, but John's readers would have remembered these visions. Remember, John was writing primarily to Jews. They would have been familiar with what Zechariah seen. The 4 horses represent God sending out agents across the earth to carry out His will. The red horse in particular signals God's action to disturb the false peace of the nations when it is time for judgment. In Zechariah, the red horses signify a readiness for battle and a time when God may move the nations from peace to conflict as a response to sin or injustice. And God is in sovereign control. The horses do not act on their own. They go at God's command and return to give Him account. This shows God isn't helpless or surprised by war. He supervises everything that happens among nations, including when peace is taken away. Other prophets also speak about this. Ezekiel 38:21 describes God calling for a sword to be set against the enemies of Israel, even leading to neighbor fighting neighbor. In Jeremiah 25:15 through 17, it talks about God giving the nations a cup of His wrath, which leads to violence and war as judgment for rebellion. The red horse in Revelation 6 continues the story told in Zechariah. It stands for the loss of peace and the outbreak of violence as God allows human choices and judgments to play out on the world stage. The color red connects to bloodshed and God's readiness to move the world from a false sense of peace into open conflict when the time is right. So after the spirit of deception comes the breakdown of peace and the rise of conflict. Jesus predicted this exact sequence in Matthew 24. The red horse in Revelation 6 shows that war and violence are part of the troubles that happen in a world that refuses the peace Christ brings. And I've said that, but I really want to drive this point home. The reason the world will be in turmoil is because it is rejecting Jesus. The reason that judgment has to fall is because the world is rejecting Jesus. So I do not buy into this belief that is becoming a bit more common that says that eventually Christianity is going to win over the entire world and that's what's going to bring Jesus back. That is not what we seem to see in the Bible. It seems that primarily the world rejects Jesus. This is what Jesus told us would happen. That many would take the broad gate that leads to destruction, but few would find the narrow gate. Few would find it. Okay? That does not, to me, it does not seem like a world that is eventually going to be won over completely to Jesus. Okay? I can already feel the comments brewing on Facebook. But this is just my understanding of the Bible as I read it. I do not see, the world just being completely won over. I see that primarily the world will reject Jesus, and that's what we see now. Right? I would argue that today we reject Jesus more than we did 50 years ago. I would make that argument. And
Scripture, there has to be a turning away.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So that's just what I see, and people are free to have their own interpretations, but that's what I see. So,
You know, even churches or religions can turn away from Christ.
Mhm.
And just because we see people or churches doesn't mean they're serving the true God.
that's true.
Yeah, they already
Yep,
are.
yep, that is true.
And like you said, as Paul even said, they would come and fall away. They'll depart from the faith. So that leads you, even Christians will depart, seeking to their self-teachers, tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah, yep. All right, let's look at the third seal now. This is the black horse. Verses 5 and 6 of Revelation 6. When he opened the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Come," and I looked, and behold, a black horse, and its rider had a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures, saying, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine." So when Jesus spoke about the signs before his return, he listed war and violence, and then he added, there will be famines. So after deception and war, Jesus says that hunger and lack will follow. These are not random details. Okay? It's not random details. In times of war and unrest, fields are left empty, people are displaced, and food becomes scarce. All of this fits perfectly with John's vision of the black horse. The rider of the black horse carries a pair of scales that's used to measure out food. A loud voice announces the high price of the most basic foods. A quart of wheat for a denarius. So in ancient times, a denarius was the usual wage for a full day's work. A quart of wheat would feed one person for a day. So in other words, a worker's entire day's wage would only buy enough to keep himself alive, not his family. Barley was less expensive, but it was considered food for the poor or for animals, and it was a little more affordable, but still expensive, 3 quarts for a denarius. The scales and the prices show a time of scarcity where survival takes all your time and energy. All you do is just survive. Oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. This is the living picture of famine Jesus warned about. He predicted that the world would see not just conflict, but also a breakdown in supply, daily basics, and security. The black horse brings this to life. And there is a note at the end, do not harm the oil and wine. Now, there's a lot of debate about what this means. It could mean that the luxuries of life, the oil and the wine, are left untouched for now, perhaps only available to the rich. It could also mean that these items are being protected, even while basic needs are in short supply. But either way, the image is clear. This is a world out of balance, where what is most needed is hard to get, and what is least needed remains. Now, God's prophets have warned about times just like this. Leviticus 26:26. God says, when I break your supply of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in a single oven, and shall dole out your bread by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. The practice of weighing food shows severe shortage. In Ezekiel, it says, Son of man, behold, I will break the supply of bread in Jerusalem. They shall eat bread by weight and with anxiety, and they shall drink water by measure and in dismay. Both passages show that weighed and measured food is a sign of judgment, anxiety, and deep need. John's readers lived in an unstable world. Famine was a real threat. War and poor harvests quickly turned cities and villages into places of hunger. Food shortages meant families faced impossible choices. For Christians who might already be on the margins, this threat was even sharper. And the use of scales, the Greek word zygos, this hinted at unfair business. Crooked merchants could use false scales in the marketplace, causing further stress on those trying to survive. The black horse and its riders show that after false hope and war, the world cannot escape the results. There's hunger, scarcity, there's inequality. Jesus saw these days coming, and John's vision puts them vividly before our eyes. And just to be clear, just to be crystal clear, you can read commentary after commentary after commentary, people wondering about the timeline of this and has this already happened or is it going to happen? I do not see how this has been fulfilled yet. There have been horrific tragedies, there's been world wars, but I do not see yet how this has actually been fulfilled.
A little historical context, that's what Hitler based his invasion on with the war. His invasion of Poland, persecution of the Jews. He visited himself as the chosen one above. And the Aryan nation is the New Jerusalem. So people during the 1939 40s were looking at these scriptures going, this is the fulfillment. You can actually find readings from that time that talk about this.
Yes, yeah.
And he was trying to fulfill it. He was also he was well read in scripture.
Yeah. Yep. So I do think this is a future event not yet fulfilled. Maybe it's coming soon. I don't know. Every generation has thought that it was coming in their generation. But it's certainly, the world today is certainly in turmoil right now, that's for sure.
Many prophecies been fulfilled.
Yeah.
Euphrates River drying up.
Yep. All right, the fourth seal, verses 7 and 8. When he opened the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature say, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades followed him. And they were given authority over a fourth of the earth, to kill with sword, and with famine, and with pestilence, and by wild beasts of the earth. So as Jesus continued his teaching in Matthew 24, he described a time of suffering that was more severe than anything that had come before. He said, "All these are but the beginning of the birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake." That's verses 8 and 9 of Matthew 24. He warned of violence leading to death and of troubles coming in waves, almost like the worship that was going in waves a chapter earlier. In Luke's version of the same teaching, Jesus adds there will be pestilences and famines and there will be terrors. That's Luke 21:11. The pale horse in Revelation 6 pulls together all the earlier troubles and intensifies them. This rider is named Death, and he is not alone. Hades, which is the realm of the dead, follows behind Death, swallowing up the victims. The Greek word for pale here is chloros, and it's actually a greenish, sickly, or corpse-like color. Well, this, I think, matches pretty well the theme of death by plague, starvation, exposure, and violence. There's 4 ways death is allowed to strike, and it echoes the list in Jesus' words. Death is allowed to strike through the sword, which is war or violence, through famine, through pestilence, which is plague or disease, and through wild beasts, chaos and danger that's unleashed when society breaks down. All of these match the birth pains that Jesus predicted, showing the world in turmoil, widespread death, disease, hunger, and the threats of a world spinning out of control. Jesus said these things would signal the world's brokenness before the end. God warned His people through the prophets that when they turned away, trouble would come in these same forms. Ezekiel 14:21. For thus says the Lord God, how much more when I send upon Jerusalem my 4 disastrous acts of judgment, sword, famine, wild beast, and pestilence, to cut off from it man and beast. This is almost the same list that John repeats here. Jeremiah 15:2-3, God says, those who are for pestilence, to pestilence, those who are for the sword, to the sword. I will point over them 4 kinds of destroyers, the sword to kill, the dogs to tear, the birds of the air, and the beasts of the earth to devour and destroy. So through the prophets, God made it clear that these disasters would follow persistent rebellion. The ultimate result of turning from God was being surrounded by death in many forms. I'm going to say that one more time. The ultimate result of turning from God was being surrounded by death in many forms.
I have a question. Back here where it says Hades will follow them and it swallows up the victims, does that mean that they all go to hell?
I don't know that that's necessarily what it means. Hades was where everyone went when they died, according to the Greeks. And so I don't know that it would say necessarily that they're all going to hell. But I think that it's physical and spiritual together, right? That's the point of saying that death is coming and Hades follows along with it. So yeah, there's physical death, but there's also there's spiritual turmoil and all this stuff that's going on, which I will say we see spiritual turmoil today in a wild way. People are just, I think the whole world almost kind of senses that it's just something not quite right. It's just something that's not quite right. So.
Well, this is for the Gentiles too, and the Romans had their own mythology about Hades.
Yeah.
So they had to understand that.
Yeah.
So it was better
Yeah.
than they knew.
Yeah. In John's day, all 4 of these calamities were real dangers. War could break out anywhere across the Roman Empire. Famine and plague swept through lands unpredictably. When villages or cities were ruined, wild animals would move into abandoned places. The early church lived with these threats as a daily reality. And the phrase, authority over 1/4 of the earth, shows that the scale is massive. They're going to have authority over 1/4 of the earth. That's a massive scale. It is severe, but it's still limited by God's permission. He only permits 1/4 of the earth. I see mercy in that. I see mercy in that.
You remind me of Job, spare his life.
Yeah. Yeah. So the pale horse sums up what happens when deception, violence, and scarcity are allowed to run their course. Death spreads and multiplies. Jesus foretold all of these sorrows as being part of the world's condition without Him. So, how do we apply this? 1, stay alert to spiritual deception. Please. Please stay alert to spiritual deception. Jesus warned first about false teachers who would appear trustworthy but lead many astray. The white horse reminds us that not everything that looks good is from God. Be careful who you listen to. Measure everything by God's word. Don't follow personality, power, or promises. Follow Jesus. And my goodness, if spiritual deception is not absolutely rampant. Social media has made it so easy to spread junk. And anybody with a phone can get on Facebook and speak very confidently and persuade people. It's wild to me. I mean, people don't read their Bibles and they don't know what's going on, and they just take what's being said at face value and, oh yeah, everybody is going to heaven. Oh yeah, God is a God of love. Yeah, everybody is going to heaven. Oh no, there's no such thing as sin anymore. Jesus crucified all of sin on the cross, and now we just get to do whatever we want to do. That stuff is being said and taught, and it's being accepted by so many people. So many people.
That's where discernment and
Yes.
knowledge of the word is personal responsibility.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, parents are literally let their kids be cats. I mean, that is dumb.
If you speak the gospel, you're gonna get hate.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I've seen it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Anger and hate. I know what the pastors and ministers go through,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't speak.
Yeah.
You'll get hated. And they like being in their stupidity. They like living in it. They like living in their ignorance. It's comfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's gonna come an end.
Yep. All right, so number 2, don't be surprised by conflict in the world. War, violence, and brokenness are part of life on this side of Christ's return. Jesus said these things must take place. They must take place. The red horse shows that the peace many promise is often shallow. Don't be shaken or discouraged when you see conflict. Remember, Jesus knew it would happen, and He is not surprised or powerless. 3, respond to need and injustice. The black horse shows a world where basic needs are often out of reach and resources are not distributed fairly. If you have enough, thank God and look for ways to help others. If you are in need, bring your situation before God with honesty. As a church, we are called to feed the hungry, care for the poor, and press for justice. And I am super proud of our church because we absolutely do those things. We absolutely do those things. And many people have no idea what our church does. And it's because we're not out there on a Facebook Live while we're doing it. We're doing it behind the scenes like we're supposed to. And we are loving on people and we are helping people as best we can. I am super, super proud of our church.
And that's rare.
Yeah.
Because mass manipulation has infiltrated the church.
Mm-hmm.
Personal gain now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right, number 4, remember the shortness and sorrow of life without Christ. The pale horse shows what happens when people and societies turn completely from God. Suffering increases and hope runs out. It might feel heavy to think about these things, but it reminds us not to put our hope in anything that won't last. Only Jesus offers true life and hope beyond this world. Number 5, trust the Lamb who opens the seals. Above all, the one who opens the seals is the same Lamb who was slain for us. He is both perfectly loving and absolutely in control. He knows all that happens on the earth. When life feels uncertain or out of control, you can go to Him. He understands suffering and He leads you through it. Number 6, live as people of hope. Jesus called these troubles the beginnings of birth pains. Birth pains are real and difficult, but they lead to something new and good. The suffering and brokenness around us will not have the last word. Because of Christ, we can live with hope, we can help others, and we can look forward to His return. So, conclusion here. As we come to the end of our study of the first 4 seals, let's not lose sight of the bigger picture. We began with heaven's worship, focused on Christ, the Lamb who is slain and is now alive forever. That vision must stay at the center as we witness the seals being opened one by one. Each seal reveals a hard reality of life in a world that resists God. Deception, conflict, scarcity, and death. These are not just ancient threats, but are ongoing troubles in every age. Every generation tells the story of false saviors, wars that destroy, want that oppresses, and tragedies that take life. And yet, none of these things surprise Christ, and none are outside His control. The Lamb is the only one found worthy to open the scroll. This means all that follows, even the darkness and pain, unfolds under His authority. No seal breaks apart from His command. No horseman rides without His knowledge. Even as judgment moves across the earth, the risen Jesus remains on the throne, praised in heaven, trusted by His people, and sovereign over history. Jesus described these birth pains Himself. He did not promise escape from suffering. He did not promise escape from suffering, but He did promise His presence through it and victory at the end. He is not just the judge, He is the Savior who bore wrath in our place. His scars prove both His love and His power. When you see heartbreak and turmoil in the world or in your own life, remember this: Christ is glorified not just in moments of beauty and peace, but right in the middle of struggle and loss. The seals reveal what happens when the world trusts in anything other than Him. But for those who belong to the Lamb, every seal broken is a step closer to the day when evil is ended and justice flows and mourning is swallowed up in the song of heaven. So keep your eyes on Jesus. Let His word shape your hopes and your actions. The Lamb who was slain is worthy of your trust. He is Lord of all, over the heavens, over the nations, over your story, and over the very end of history. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing.